Welcome to my studio. I'm excited about this particular reflection today because it's the beginning of a new series of reflections that I want to do. Recently had done a whole series I called Nuggets from James. This series I want to just entitle The Questions Jesus Asks. I've been enjoying spending some time just reading through the Gospels and been reading recently in the Gospel of Mark. And as I had a reflection on an encounter Jesus had with his disciples, one of the experiences, he asked some questions. And I thought, so much of Jesus' ministry revolved around simply asking a question and thinking. And I think these are questions worth pondering for all of us. And so the question that I'm reflecting on today comes from the Gospel of Mark, and it's in verse 40. When it said, he said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid?" That's the first question. Why are you so afraid? And then the second question is, do you still have no faith? Another question. Those are worth pondering a little bit. Why are you so afraid? Well, here's the context of this. Jesus had said to his disciples, this is verse 35, that day when the evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." And so leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him, and a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. And he said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" As I pondered this a little bit, I thought, here Jesus is with his disciples in the boat. We don't know how large of a boat it was. It was large enough that there were a few of the disciples there. We don't really know who of the disciples were in that boat. It said there were other boats there. Had they maybe a few got in other boats? We don't know those things. But I think about the disciples, and what we do know of the 12 is that 4 of them were experienced fishermen. They had spent many years working on the Sea of Galilee, so they knew about squalls and storms that could blow up. And so we know that. We know also the boat was big enough that Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. And many want to ponder, was Jesus just so exhausted that even in this storm he could be sleeping? I tend to think he was just so at rest in the Father and who he was, that nothing really frazzled him that much. That would seem to be connected to the questions that he asks them. Do you have no faith? And so here are these experienced fishermen, and they know how dangerous the sea can be. And now they're in this storm, and it says the waves are coming up over the side. And then Jesus asks that question. And so as I pondered that, I thought, Jesus could ask me that question too. You see, the disciples had already been with Jesus for a period of time. We don't really know how long that time would have been, but they had already witnessed many miracles Jesus had performed. They watched him heal people. It says in the first chapter of Mark that people came from all over and he was healing them on the evening of a Sabbath, for example, or at the end of the Sabbath. And then we know another time 4 people brought a man and lowered him through the window, through the ceiling, tore out part of the roof and lowered him down. And Jesus healed this paralyzed person in a very miraculous way. He got up, took his mat, and walked. And so they had witnessed Jesus doing these miracles, and now he's with them in the boat, and yet they're so afraid. And they wake him up and cry out to him, so to speak, "Don't you care that we drowned?" And I thought about myself. I look back over my life and And now at this stage of life, there's a number of years I can look back over. And I see so many ways that God has intervened in my life and provided in wonderful ways, miraculous ways, we might even say, providentially for sure, but some really quite dramatic. And I remember those times. And yet, still, when a crisis arises or something comes up, it's easy to doubt and say, how are we going to get through this time? I remember a number of years ago now, probably 12, 13 years ago, and devotionally reading through some of the classics, and I enjoy doing that, just a chapter a day, so to speak. And I had recently, at that point in time, I had completed the book by George Mueller, Answers to Prayer, and reading about how God had miraculously intervened so many times in the starting of that orphanage, and some dramatic stories. I heartily recommend the book by George Mueller. It's kind of his autobiography in a condensed version, Answers to Prayer, because he lived by prayer, trusting God. And I remember after that thinking, I'm going to just write down ways that I've seen God answer prayer in my life. And so many times God had done wonderful things, and I can't even think of all of them, and so it was a wonderful little journaling process to think of those ways that God has done that. And so then now, as I ponder this question where Jesus says, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And so in facing some kind of a difficult situation, whether it's a human relationship issue with people or some other kind of thing, I need to say, can I trust God in this? And so I would invite you to ask that question for yourself. How goes it with you? Are you at those points where you're wondering, how is God going to see us through this one? And to hear Jesus say, why do you doubt? Do you still have no faith? And then use that as an opportunity to just come before God and say, Lord, I don't know how you're going to answer this prayer, but I know that I can have confidence in you and that you will meet the need, whatever it might be, because I know that my life is in your care and in your hands, and I can trust you with all the days of my life. And so I pray that that can be our heart from this question that Jesus asks. Can we have our confidence fully in him? Because he is with us in the boat. May God bless you today. And I just want to add one more thing. Starting this new series of reflections. If you appreciate this and you've not subscribed to my channel, I invite you to subscribe. And you can do that by clicking the photo at the bottom left or bottom right hand corner of the screen. And I also invite you to leave a comment and please share with others, because we do want to have people touched by the questions that Jesus asks. God be with you.